was thinking. I don't know what I was thinking. Well, I was thinking I wanted to show you guys the RV park behind there, but I saw enough. It was only going to get worse.
While American troops fought the Axis powers in the name of freedom and human dignity, the Army itself practiced segregation, a reflection of the period.
All right. Well, we're on our way to the General Patton Memorial Museum in Chiriaco Summit, California. I had a special reaction to this museum, very personal. It really took me back to my military service and filled me with pride while I was there. I even included a picture of me back in 1987 doing my job and a couple of the structures we built while I was in North Africa. I in no way, shape, or form was anywhere around during World War II, but this museum that celebrates its history reminded me of the conditions I trained for while I served in the 1980s. As a result, I do more talking and the video's longer than usual. Look at them tanks. I mean, how often do you drive by someplace and just see a bunch of tanks that park someplace? I'm gonna have to get some gas. But, you know what? I want to go see. We had a similar mission and endured very similar conditions to the point that I spent the summer of 1987 in Cairo, Egypt. I was there for Operation Bright Star. And more tanks. Now they got a campground back here. That's what I was coming back here for. But the more of this dirt I see, the less interested I am. Oh yeah, there it is. So there's the campground. Private area, do not enter. There's a campground back there. Free campground. I've seen enough of that. Yeah, I'm gonna get gas afterwards. Let's go see this place. She sure is clean. I can't believe I took it down that dirt road. I don't know what I was thinking. Well, I was thinking I wanted to show you guys the RV park behind there, but I saw enough. It was only going to get worse. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to look at that. That is life-size, people. That's actually bigger than life-size. They look taller than me. So this is the General Patton Memorial Museum.
Patton insisted on Spartan facilities that mirrored field conditions. So there were no barracks, no mess halls, nothing permanent, just tents.
Crap games and card games, and they have a PX that serves warm beer when they can get it. Lieutenant Gil Terry, 736 Tank Battalion.
Throwed football and played a little baseball and stuff like that. Running in the sand. Yeah, it was good practice.
While American troops fought the Axis powers in the name of freedom and human dignity, the Army itself practiced segregation, a reflection of the period. African American soldiers at the DTC served in all-black units, tasked with service and support duties rather than combat preparation.
Most of the outfits that the blacks were in were working outfits, labor outfits. It was our way of living all during the war. We were segregated.
Although Patton didn't change this practice of prejudice while at the Desert Training Center, he was a highly practical commander in combat. He relied heavily on the 761st Tank Battalion, an all-African-American unit, to spearhead engagements in his relentless pursuit of the enemy.
Patton thought everybody was the same when you're in combat. You don't need to be discriminated against another guy that's in combat with you. He's doing the same thing you do.
Patton left the DTC in November of 1942 to lead untested American forces in Operation Torch, the campaign to defeat Rommel in North Africa.
Orders ahead. We try and effect a junction with the British 8th Army.
So an interesting story that Beatrice, who is the docent here at the General Patton Museum, she told me that this land was donated by the Chiriaco family because, and there's a restaurant right next door here that's been here. I mean, it's a family-owned restaurant, same family, Chiriaco, and the owner used to know General Patton back when it was, you know, one table diner. General Patton used to actually come here when this was the Desert Training Center for the troops training for World War II. Anyways, General Patton used to come here and he would eat at the diner. And he got to know the owner. And the owner is a pretty successful businessman here. That's why this whole area is named after them, the family. They donated this land to the military, not the military, they donated this land for this museum. But back in the day, they used to train here because it was a great example. It was a great comparison. They were training to go fight in North Africa, and this terrain was very useful for that. High temperatures, rugged mountain hillsides. It was a perfect training ground if you're on your way to North Africa to fight. So, as you saw in the video, I couldn't help but notice the tents they were using. Those are the same tents we were using when I was in the Air Force in the 80s. They got nicer ones now. They started coming out with nicer ones in the late 80s, which we never had a chance to use. But I could certainly understand and sympathize what they were talking about. You know, certain nights they were able to get warm beer. I remember that same feeling when I went overseas, when I went up to Cairo, Egypt for Operation Bright Star, the Joint Forces operation. I went in '87, and we would send folks down in the town, and they would come back with this beer called Stella beer, big brown bottles. They were warm, room temperature in Cairo, Egypt in August was 125 degrees. Okay, so now we're going to go outside and go to the tank yard while we still can get out back and check out some tanks. So, okay, let's go see some tanks. Look at, oh, so there, that's the dry camping area they got. Look at a tent camper out there. It's part of the Harvest Host system. So if you're in the area, you're a Harvest Host member, or even if you're not, I believe you can still camp here. It's worth checking into, that's for sure. Oh, let's go in here and see what's going on. Wow. Look at this. Look at that Cadillac. 1939. Nice GI ride there. Didn't have Cadillacs when I was in. Here we go. Deuce and a half, 6x6. Wow. There you go. Matzner Tank Pavilion. When I was in Cairo, I mentioned to you earlier, I was in Cairo during the summer of 1987. I was a welder. What do welders do in the middle of the desert? Anything that they need. But I'll tell you what I wasn't doing, I wasn't welding. Because everything was bolt together, stick and tin, prefab. We brought an entire city with us and we left it behind, and especially anything wood. That stayed behind. We donated it to Cairo. See, that's the kind of stuff we would have been doing, my unit. But yeah, my wartime duty, besides staying alive, was matting. We would pull matting across the runways that cover up bombed runways with this aluminum matting. He said each guy, by the time he put one section together and pulled it across, you pull it with a truck, of course. But each man out of a dozen guys, you've picked up about 3,000 pounds worth of aluminum matting to repair the bombed out runways. But my point being, like I said, when you're a welder, sheet metal worker, there's not a whole lot of call for that in Cairo. So you end up being a grunt. You know, you're a 20-year-old strong dude that could pick heavy things up and put them in another place, shovel sand and all kinds of things you don't really want to do. But so they came through one day asking for volunteers. Now everybody knows you don't volunteer for anything in the military unless you're doggone sure what you're getting involved with. And even then it's a crapshoot. But what the heck is this? So they came by and said, hey, you guys they needed some sand. A bunch of sand moved out, relocated, driven across the desert. I mean, we had half of this. We had a large portion of the Sahara Desert dedicated to this Joint Forces operation. I mean, planes were coming in non-stop for the first month, just dropping off supplies and troops. Well, when you're in civil engineering, you're one of the first folks to get dropped off because you got to support the base. That's your whole goal, is to support the base and rapid runway repair. They were looking for volunteers to drive, and I'm thinking, okay, I could, sitting around here shoveling, or I could get inside this big old deuce and a half, or 5-ton, and haul sand around. But what I did know was I did not want to spend the rest of the day, or the rest of the week for that matter, doing what I was doing, which was at the time I was working a concrete crew because we were setting up humongous Quonset huts. To get things out of the sun.
So, actually, I want to go back there again. Part of setting these Quonset huts is burying the steel framework in the sand. You know, there's no real foundations to speak of, but these big steel beams would go in the sand, and then they would pour concrete around them, and then you had to hold this big old hose, like a 4-inch hose, with this big steel head on the end of it, and it was a vibrating hose that would go into the concrete and vibrate all the air out of the concrete. This hose was heavy. I mean, there's a 4-inch hose, and you and another guy are guiding it into these things, these pits, getting all the air out of that. So I was about tired of that. I've been doing that for a few days. And the Sarge came around, and I was loaned out to the Army. I was the only airman there. And I was loaned out to the Army, which was an interesting experience. They were cool. I took some ribbon because I was an airman, but you know, after a while, as long as you're a hard worker, that's all that mattered. You carry your own, you earn the respect, and you end up with some friends, and when it's all said and done. So I worked my butt off, but when the guy came around and says, "Can you drive this vehicle and start hauling sand?" I was like, "Absolutely, yes, sir. I'd drive that puppy right now." I hopped in that truck and I ended up driving that thing for a week before they found something else for me to do. But at least I got around for a week in this big old, where is this? Like one of these. Just like that. In much better condition. They had one that, about in this condition, that's the first one I was in. Crank windows, no air conditioning. Again, it's 120 something degrees out there in Sahara. After a couple of days, I had finagled myself one of the newer models, had air conditioning in it. Oh boy. I was wanting to hold on to that. I mean, I would have slept in it if they would have let me. But yeah, I was hauling sand back and forth. It was crazy. You know, you make the best out of a situation. I'm not gonna say bad situation. I mean, this is the military. It could have been a lot worse. So it wasn't a bad situation. It was interesting though. But yeah, I was loaned out to the Army for a while doing those Quonset huts. All that stuff stayed. You know, we built that stuff and left it behind for the Egyptians, which I'm sure they appreciated it. But yeah, when he came up and said, "Can you drive that thing?" I said, "Absolutely. I'll drive that thing till the wheels fall off it." But you know, when you're 20, you don't know no better. You make the best out of your situation if you're smart. But yeah, and that experience with the Army, that was pretty cool.
Well, I warned you in the beginning this was going to be a long one, so I hope if you're still with me, I really appreciate it. And if you could leave me a like and subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it that much more. But you know, when I got to this museum, it got real personal real quick and took me back to my military days. So, and because I got my new microphone working, I'm talking the whole time, so it makes it very difficult to do voiceovers later and put in important facts. But the biggest fact I want to correct is the way I pronounce the town. I kept saying Chiriaco, and it should be Chiriaco. So my apologies to the family on that. But thank you folks for joining me. I appreciate you being here. And like I always end, please be careful and be kind.